Sara claimed her mother had tried to drown her in the bath and burn her with a lighter. A judge had to decide again where she should live.
If you thought you knew everything about the Sara Sharif case, brace yourself. In this video, we'll uncover a string of shocking new details, from revelations about Urfan Sharif's multiple marriages and the surprising truth about his wife Beinash, also marrying twice before him, to disturbing allegations that Sara's biological mother Olga was abusive, one of the very reasons Urfan won custody in the first place. You'll hear raw testimony from an ex-girlfriend who paints a terrifying picture of Urfan's behavior, plus interviews with his friends and family back home in Pakistan, where pressure from local authorities ultimately forced the fugitives to return to the England. We'll also reveal the latest on Sara's siblings, whose lives have been turned upside down by this tragedy. This is the part of the case the headlines left out, and you won't want to miss a single moment. It's hard to imagine that things could get any darker in Sara's story. The day I first heard about her case, it felt like a punch to the gut. Now, each new revelation only tightens that knot in our stomachs. We know the verdict has come down at last. All three suspects have stood before a judge in the England and have been sentenced. But prisons and sentences aren't the end of the story. Far from it. In fact, this entire tragedy now unfolds on two continents, revealing a tangled web of secrets, a frantic escape, and a deeply flawed system that left Sara unprotected. Many of you asked, where was Sara's biological mother? Why didn't the neighbors or school step in more forcefully? How did social services fail to intervene? It all paints an even more disturbing picture of how thoroughly Sara was failed by the very people who should have protected her. Let's begin with the final snapshot of the England trial, then move backward, sifting through new evidence, from the Sharif family's flight to Pakistan and the chase by authorities there, to the heartbreak in the neighborhood Sara left behind, and culminating in the systematic failures that preceded her death. On December 17, 2024, the Old Bailey in London delivered a verdict that a judge described as inevitable, yet still beyond words. Sara Sharif's father, Urfan Sharif, was convicted of murder, a murder deemed so brutal and prolonged that the judge imposed a life sentence with a minimum of 40 years before parole eligibility. Equally shocking to many was the fact that Sara's stepmother, Beinash Batool, was found just as culpable for the murder, earning her a life sentence with a 33-year minimum. Faisal Malik, Sara's uncle, was found guilty of causing or allowing the death of a child. While he avoided a murder conviction, the court sentenced him to 16 years for looking on passively, sometimes literally in the same cramped house as Sara was tortured. During sentencing, the judge listed details grim enough to unnerve even seasoned prosecutors. 71 external injuries, severe burns shaped like the sole plate of an iron, possibly inflicted by multiple adults holding Sara down, fractures in her spinal column, shoulders, ribs, and arms, bite marks from an adult that matched the stepmother's teeth pattern. Although Beinash refused to provide dental impressions, the forensic evidence was irrefutable. The judge made one thing clear: no legal sentence could ever bring Sara back or truly convey the monstrousness of what she endured. When those sentences came down, everyone thought, that must be it. Justice, at least in some form. But soon after, we got more information about what really happened, both before and after Sara was found lifeless in her Woking home. The next chapter in Sara's tragedy takes us almost 4,000 miles away to Pakistan. You see, while Surrey police in England were only just discovering Sara's body on August 10, 2023, Urfan, Beinash, and Faisal were already in Islamabad. They had taken 5 other children with them on a pre-booked flight from Heathrow, leaving Sara's lifeless body behind. In fact, a chilling phone call was placed to England Emergency Services from Islamabad Airport, with Urfan admitting, "I killed my daughter," but giving no immediate indication of his own whereabouts. Once in Pakistan, they disappeared. According to investigators, the fugitives tossed their British SIM cards, bought new ones under aliases, and changed locations frequently: Mirpur, Sialkot, and even some tourist spots like Naran and Kagan, each time staying only a few days. This wasn't just rumor. Pakistani authorities had begun a manhunt at the request of the England government, working through Interpol, raiding multiple homes, rounding up extended relatives, and placing them under pressure. The police gleaned that Urfan's family was also at odds over what to do. The father, Muhammad Sharif, reportedly lied about where his son was, only admitting later that Urfan and the children had briefly stayed in the village of Bagasila before moving on. DPO, District Police Officer, Nasir Mahmood Bajwa was tasked with locating Urfan and his family.
ये बड़ा important high-profile case था.
This was a very significant and high-profile case. A 10-year-old girl named Sara was found dead in the UK. Immediately after her death, her father, Urfan Sharif, her uncle, Faisal Sharif, and her stepmother, Beinash Batool, along with 5 other minor children, traveled to Pakistan. Once in Pakistan, Sara's father, Urfan Sharif, contacted the UK police to report that his daughter had died at their home. The UK police then notified the Interior Ministry, who in turn, through the FIA, alerted the district police in Jhelum. I was assigned to the case with 2 main objectives. First, to ensure the safety of the 5 minor children, and second, to locate Urfan Sharif, Faisal Sharif, and Beinash Batool. Upon arriving in Pakistan, they immediately turned off their mobile phones and obtained new SIM cards under different names. They also moved frequently, never staying in one place for more than a few days. We learned they had stayed in Mirpur with relatives in Sialkot and had also traveled to Naran and Kagan. Initially, they moved with the children but later separated from them, likely because it was difficult to travel with the children. Through search operations, we were able to locate and recover the minors. After recovering the children, we presented them in the court of the district and sessions judge of Jhelum, who then handed them over to the Child Protection Bureau. Beinash Batool released a video statement which was also broadcast on the media, in which she requested safe passage and stated that they would surrender. They also expressed concerns about their safety. Our role was not to arrest them, but to locate them and inform the relevant authority, the FIA.
Bajwa and his team conducted extensive raids, sometimes even arresting dozens of extended family members in sweeps to put pressure on the fugitives. The net started closing in, giving the Sharifs no place to hide.
I attempted to gather information about Urfan Sharif from his father, Muhammad Sharif, who lives in the village of Bagasila nearby. However, he misled us, providing false information. He claimed he hadn't had any contact with Urfan Sharif since 2010 and suggested that if Urfan had come to Pakistan, he likely went to Mirpur to stay with his in-laws. Interestingly, there was a salon across from their house. I went there, got a haircut, and struck up a conversation with the barber. I asked him if the house across the street belonged to Urfan Sharif, when Urfan had last been in Pakistan, and if he had returned recently. The barber told me that Urfan had visited in 2017, and had also been seen just a few days prior. We then reviewed footage from nearby security cameras, and I also went to Islamabad airport to check their CCTV footage. This revealed that Urfan Sharif had arrived in Pakistan with his family and was greeted by his 2 brothers. After this, we interviewed Muhammad Sharif again. This time, he admitted that he had been scared. He said that Urfan Sharif and his family had visited him a few days earlier and had left after a couple of days. We then started gathering information from the beginning. The turning point in the case was when we discovered where the children were being kept. We learned that Beinash Batool was British-born. Before Urfan Sharif, she had been married to a man named Ali, who was also from Jhelum. We interviewed Ali as well. He explained that he had gone to England on a student visa and married Beinash Batool there. After some time, they separated, and he stated that the reason for their separation was Urfan Sharif. It turns out that Urfan had first married his uncle's daughter in Pakistan, then went to England on a student visa. He divorced his cousin and married a Polish woman named Olga. He later divorced Olga and then married Beinash Batool, making a total of 3 marriages.
While the father, stepmother, and uncle were on the run, investigators spoke to close relatives in Jhelum. We learn about a father, Muhammad Sharif, who initially denied knowing where his son was, a brother, and friends who simply couldn't believe Urfan would ever hurt his own child.
I'd like to ask you a few questions for a brief interview.
Well, I'm sorry, we're already very worried.
If you're not comfortable speaking, perhaps a family member could speak on your behalf.
No one can speak about it. The incident happened in the UK, not in Pakistan.
You must have spoken with Urfan?
We talk daily. We also talk to Faisal.
I understand you can't discuss the details of the case, but could you share what Urfan said?
When this whole incident happened, my brother wasn't even at home. He was working as a taxi driver. He wasn't there. This is something the police and the judge are aware of. Whatever happened over there, why did he admit to it? That's something he can explain. I'm sorry, but please don't ask us more. I don't want to talk about this anymore.
Whether Imran truly believes that or simply wants to protect a sibling, we can't say. But time and again, we see family members expressing disbelief. No father can do this. Or he was a bright student, an intellectual, always smiling.
I and
Urfan were classmates in 9th and 10th grade. We went to the same school for our matriculation. We were always competing. Sometimes Urfan would get first place and sometimes I would. He was a brilliant student, very intellectual. He was a part of my life during 9th and 10th grade. We used to see each other daily, and we were good friends. After that, when college started, he went to a different college. If there was one defining characteristic of his personality, it was that he always talked with a smile. No father could ever do something like that to his children. He couldn't even imagine it. Negligence is one thing, but knowing him as a person, he could never do such a thing. I truly believe that in my heart.
But in the face of forensic evidence from the England, evidence that includes confessions and voice recordings, these character witness accounts paint a picture of someone who led a double life. Even close friends eventually admitted feeling uneasy once they saw the official charges.
I used to meet his father and brothers. I even went with him to Lahore on the orders of the DPO. His father was saying that Urfan had planned to come to Pakistan for the sake of the children because the government there takes the kids away. That's why he came to Pakistan. When things got difficult here and they faced a lot of problems, he surrendered himself and went back. The children are still studying here at APS school. He always said that his son could never do such a thing. No one could ever do something like that to their own children. But after watching the interviews and hearing what people are saying, it's very upsetting. And we've been worried as well, because no one could ever do something like that to their children.
It's also a shocking news to know that Urfan was married multiple times. Let's take a closer look at Urfan Sharif's tangled marital history, a history that foreshadowed much of the turmoil to come. First, there was his cousin in Pakistan, a marriage arranged by their extended family. When Urfan left for the England on a student visa, he never looked back, ultimately divorcing her. Some reports hint that even in those early years, allegations of controlling behavior and emotional abuse had already begun to surface. Then came Olga, a Polish national who would soon become Sara Sharif's biological mother. Though specifics of their relationship remain hazy, it's known they tied the knot in the England. Their union didn't last, however, and they divorced. Amid accusations of volatility on both sides, court decisions would later hinge on these abuse allegations, with Olga being painted as abusive herself, a factor that led to Urfan gaining custody of Sara. Finally, we have Beinash Batool, the stepmother in this harrowing case. Multiple sources suggest she had at least one, possibly two, previous marriages before meeting Urfan. Beinash Batool's marital history is far more complex than initially assumed. According to a local contact named Amir Kiani,
Beinash and Urfan met in Britain. Before that, Beinash had been married. She was married to a man named Ali Mir, who was also from Jhelum. They got married, but for some reason they separated. Ali Mir left and returned to Pakistan. According to our information, Beinash had two marriages before marrying Urfan. Before Ali Mir, her first marriage was to a man named Shamrais, who is from Gujar Khan and currently runs his own business in Rawalpindi. I've met with Ali Mir. He's also from Jhelum. He also had problems with Beinash, which led to their separation and his return to Pakistan. Ali Mir also went to Britain on a student visa. It's interesting that Beinash married 3 people, and all 3 went to Britain on student visas. Urfan went to the UK on a student visa around 2000 or 2001. Similarly, I met Ali, who told me he had gone to the UK on a student visa. It makes you wonder, why did they all choose Beinash? Was there no other woman there to marry? Beinash had British nationality. She was born in Britain, so she has citizenship, which is why anyone who goes there on a student visa often hopes to settle there permanently.
Amir Kiani suggests that Beinash's appeal stemmed largely from her British nationality, providing a pathway to residency for spouses who otherwise went to the England on temporary visas. Each of Beinash's marriages, it seems, followed an unsettling pattern of conflict, alleged opportunism, and an ultimate return to Pakistan for those who decided they could no longer remain in such fraught circumstances. It appears that each time Urfan was in a relationship, conflict and allegations of abuse weren't far behind. The consistent pattern, violence, controlling behavior, and the potential that he used these marriages to cement residency or legal status in the England. And then there's a piece of the puzzle that specifically stunned many watchers. Allegations against Sara's biological mother, Olga, included claims that she once tried to drown Sara and burn her with a lighter. This was part of why the courts eventually gave custody to Urfan, ironically sending Sara straight into an even worse environment. Back in Woking, Surrey, some neighbors noticed bruises on Sara. One next-door neighbor, Jody, admitted that she found Sara withdrawn and pale, but never suspected an extreme level of violence.
Seemed separate, perhaps a bit withdrawn, pale. It didn't make me feel suspicious.
Sara had been bullied for wearing a hijab and they'd removed her from the school. I thought that that was very alienating for the child. And Beinash said, well, she's making friends in the mosque. I said, okay, conversation ended.
But you didn't buy that?
I didn't buy that.
She was very bubbly, she was very kind. She was never shy. She always used to be in like a pretend fashion show, and it was just really nice to watch. She told me she fell off her bike, but I just knew that's not something that you would fall off your bike.
According to newscasts, teachers sometimes saw bruises and reported them, but after a while, Sara simply stopped coming to school, homeschooled, effectively pulled out of sight. This is a recurring theme in tragic child abuse cases, as so many viewers have pointed out. Once a child is removed from formal education, the safeguarding net shrinks dramatically. We've also obtained coverage from major news outlets. They describe how, in 2022, Sara's teachers first noticed a bruise under her left eye.
It was 2022 when teachers first noticed Sara had a bruise under her left eye. 6 months later, she started wearing a hijab to conceal her injuries. In March 2023, teachers again noticed bruises on Sara's cheek and eye. At this point, they made a referral to social services. But just 6 days later, after a phone call with her father, social workers decided to take no further action. More bruises were seen by teachers, but by April, the 10-year-old was withdrawn from class to be homeschooled. By August, Sara was dead.
The law in this country needs strengthening so that children who are at risk like this cannot be home educated, and that needs to happen now.
And yes, Surrey County Council is carrying out a comprehensive safeguarding review. But the question remains, how many more heartbreaks, like Victoria Climby, Baby P, Arthur Labinjo Hughes, will it take before real structural changes occur? People also repeatedly ask, where was Sara's mother Olga in all this? The truth is tangled. Early allegations suggested Olga might have been abusive too, accused of trying to drown Sara or burn her with a lighter. It was partly why the family court gave custody to Urfan in 2019. Olga contested that vigorously. After losing the custody battle, her contact with Sara waned more and more, blocked by Urfan's manipulations. By the time Sara died, Olga was living separately, largely powerless to intervene. Olga gave a tearful statement on Polish television, describing how she identified Sara's body at the mortuary. One cheek was swollen, the other bruised. She sobbed, "Olga, even now when I close my eyes, I see what my baby looked like. I just keep thinking, maybe I could have done more. Maybe someone should have listened to me." Sara wasn't the only child in that household. Many of you asked, where is Sara's brother? What about the other siblings? After arriving in Pakistan, Urfan, Beinash, and Faisal initially fled with 5 minors, moving them from place to place. Pakistani authorities eventually located all 5 children in Jhelum, placing them under state protection for a short period. However, recent court orders, from hearings in Lahore and Jhelum, have resulted in the children being returned to the custody of their paternal grandfather, Urfan Sharif. At present, he has been granted temporary guardianship, while a full custody dispute continues in the Pakistani courts.
I've met with the kids. They're doing okay, but, you know, kids without their parents, it's tough for them. The oldest son, Sara's full brother, is very active and responsible. The 2 girls are a bit withdrawn, and there's a baby who's about a year or 2 months old. Their uncle has enrolled them in the APS school here.
One of the most eye-opening new pieces of testimony is from one of Urfan's ex-girlfriends, someone who met him at work in the England and recalls a pattern of jealousy, physical aggression, and controlling behavior that escalated to terrifying levels. She described how he once pinned her down, brandished a knife at her throat, and told her she was his and only his.
I knew that he has 2 faces. This one face, it was kind,
very nice, very lovely. And the second face was devil. After a really long time, he was with the Olga. He loved to have more children. I had miscarriage. I was crying like a kid. And he was like, "Oh, you did it, you did abortion, how you can do that?" And for me, that was like two very bad punches on the face. One, that I lost the baby, and second, that Urfan said I did it, I did abortion. Oh my God, that was so... One day, when I come home after work, he just started shouting on me and grabbed me and threw me on the couch and opens my legs because he wants to know that I'm not cheating him. That was the first very red flag that something is wrong. One day that the big thing happens, I was at home. He was at work. When he get a break from work, he just came home and start shouting on me, start looking in my pockets, start pushing me. He pushed me on the couch and he grabbed the knife. He squeezed my cheeks and put the knife in my neck. And he said that I'm his and only his. I reported in the police station. Maybe after a week, 2 weeks, he was just start writing me messages to give him another chance and calling me. He knew how to play very nice and very lovely.
Her harrowing story suggests that the violence we see in Sara's murder isn't an outlier, but part of a long chain of abusive incidents. She even considered that if she had stayed with him and had his child, she might have ended up like Olga, locked in a custody battle, powerless to protect the kids when the father turned violent. Another critical point: in some of the official documents made public, it's shown that Urfan Sharif had prior arrests for domestic abuse and threats to kill.
Urfan Sharif was arrested 3 times for domestic abuse and threats to kill ex-girlfriends. And one of the major questions now for the authorities is whether that crucial information was properly shared between agencies such as social services and the police, and whether they were fully aware of the risks he posed to Sara.
So why didn't that automatically disqualify him from receiving custody of Sara in 2019? People ask if the family court judge should be held responsible. The difficulty is that family court decisions rest on the best evidence available at the time, and the mother's alleged abuse overshadowed the father's proven violence. Still, we see the same patterns emerging from past tragedies. Police agencies, social services, and family courts not sharing data effectively. Each one possibly had reasons to be concerned, but apparently no single entity took strong action once the father took Sara out of school entirely. When Urfan Sharif finally returned to England on the 13th of September 2023, he was promptly arrested on the plane at Gatwick and brought in for questioning. Initially, he had phoned police from Islamabad saying he had legally punished his daughter and beat her too much, though he claimed he never intended to kill her. Once in formal interviews, however, Urfan mostly adopted a no-comment stance, offering few details and shifting blame to his wife.
It says here, I did legally punish my daughter. Yeah. Explain to me. No comment. What was the legal punishment? No comment. Did you intend to cause? No comment. Did you intend to cause her serious harm? No comment. No comment. No comment. Just give you one last opportunity now in this interview to tell us what happened to Sara. No comment.
Beinash. She too repeatedly refused to cooperate.
Please, could you introduce yourself? What's your name?
So my name is Beinash Batool.
And you are about to be interviewed for the offence of murder. What's your understanding of murder? What's your understanding of that offence?
Killing someone.
Yeah. Okay, so it's intentionally killing somebody. Okay. What happened to Sara?
No comment.
What did you see?
No comment.
How you left Sara?
No comment.
As you said in the video, you want to come back to the UK, clear your name in the UK courts. Well, here we are. This is the start of the process. So why would you not speak to us now?
No comment.
Who did that to Sara?
No comment.
Do you love Sara?
No comment.
Did you care about her at all?
No comment.
Only later in court did Urfan make a partial confession, at one point declaring she died because of me, though he maintained that he did not plan to kill Sara. Faisal Malik, Sara's uncle, tried to distance himself by claiming he was rarely present in the home, but messages, photographs, and testimonies presented at trial showed he shared the same house for an extended period, seeing and hearing enough to intervene, and consistently doing nothing. That was enough proof for the jury to convict him of causing or allowing Sara's death.
If you weren't involved in her death, tell me how she died.
No comments.
Once the judge weighed the evidence and the gravity of the abuse, sentencing was unavoidable. 40 years minimum in prison for Urfan, 33 for Beinash, and 16 for Faisal. Yet for many, those numbers still felt insufficient compared to what Sara endured. The court's decision may have brought her close to the legal process, but it offered little comfort for a public still grappling with how deeply the system, and those closest to Sara, had failed her. Throughout this ordeal, homeschooling emerges as a glaring vulnerability in child protection. Repeatedly, teachers had expressed concern, but once Urfan withdrew Sara to homeschool, the outside world lost nearly all contact. New proposals from officials and child welfare advocates suggest legally forbidding parents with a known child protection risk from removing their kids from school. Yet, these are still just statements. If history is any guide, we'll see official inquiries, a swirl of press coverage, and possibly minimal real change until another child suffers the same fate. Now the question is, how do we prevent this from happening again? Politicians mention new laws requiring stricter oversight of homeschooled children, improved multi-agency communication, and immediate checks whenever a child with known risk factors is pulled from formal education. Yet those proposals echo earlier calls made after previous tragedies. Will Sara's case finally spur real change? In the end, the swirl of legal battles, arrests, and systemic failures can obscure who Sara actually was. A bright, creative child, once excited about living life, nurturing a big dream of singing on stage. And that's what everyone who knew her wants to remember. Not the injuries or the horrific final days. She was a little girl who deserved safety, love, and a future. And it is for her, and for all children who slip through cracks, that we must keep asking questions, keep pushing for answers, keep demanding better from law enforcement, from social services, from courts, because no child should ever have to ask, "Why won't anyone help me?" as Sara must have in her final hours. If you've made it this far, thank you for bearing witness to Sara's story. For those watching, please stay engaged. If you see or suspect abuse, speak up. If a child suddenly disappears from school or shows unexplained bruises, sound the alarm. Systems only improve when enough of us demand accountability and action. Remember Sara's name. Let her be the catalyst for change, so that no child ever endures what she did, and no family, no neighbor, no teacher misses those cries for help again. Until next time, stay safe, stay vigilant, and please, let's keep Sara's memory alive.
I close my eyes, I open